All right. Hey, everybody. I know I'm a little bit late on this lecture. Um, I've also been having some internet problems ever since the weather, um, particularly the tornadoes. The tornadoes that touched down in Orangeburg actually touched down really close to my house, and my internet has been it's been waffly. So I wanted to make sure at least it seemed like it was working a little bit better before I went ahead and tried to commit myself to doing a full length lecture for you guys. What I'm going to try to cover in this lecture is chapter 9 of Romaine's book. Like I said, you'll notice I really haven't been sticking so much to your textbook because those are short readings, and I'm going to be quite honest. Like I've read them as we go through. I haven't really been getting a whole lot out of it. And again, that's not to try to say you shouldn't or that you wouldn't. It's just that it's hard for me to teach something that it feels so sterile to me. And also, again, being a kind of a history person, I'm not necessarily on board with some of the portrayals that are in that book. Again, it's an old book. Maybe that's why. But that's beside the point. What I want to do is I have a meeting, a virtual meeting with the dean in about 40 minutes. So what I want to try to do is get through chapter 9 of Advertising Gender and try to make it kind of make sense to you guys about what Romaine is saying. And what we have to remember is this too. Romaine is just one critic. Okay. We also want to remember, like I said last time, she's a feminist critic. Okay. So while I like what she does, I would also suggest take it with a grain of salt too. Okay. It's not nothing you read. Well, most anything you read, you should not treat it like it's the gospel. Obviously, unless you're reading the gospel. That's where I was going with that. In other words, these are by and large her opinions. Now, she has a lot of scholarship. I mean, she's a good scholar. There's no denying that. But what I'm getting at is she has an agenda she's forwarding. She has an ideology that she's forwarding. And you may or may not agree with that agenda. That's totally fine. Again, I'm not trying to jam anything down your throat. I'm not telling you she's right or wrong. What I'm doing is putting it out there for us to think about, because I think what she talks about is a little more contemporary in the sense of gender than what your textbook is doing. That's the reason why I really haven't been using the textbook that heavily, if you've noticed. Okay. Again, I'm not telling you not to read it. I would not do that. I think you should be reading it. And it's very short. I mean, most of those chapters that are on there, that are on your Moodle page, they're in PDF form. I got them from Dr. Wheeler. They're only like maybe 10 pages a piece. I mean, literally, it's this class probably has the least reading of a standard class that I've ever seen. And it's based on that textbook. So that's another one of the reasons why I incorporated the Romaine in here, because I think it's a little more challenging and therefore a little more interesting. It's also much more current. Like I said, I believe that book came out in 98 or 99. So, yes, it's 20 years old, but comparative to your textbook, at least, which I don't know when that book was written, at least it has a newer feel to it. It just doesn't feel as surgical. So what I want to do is start out looking at Advertising Gender and just kind of hit on some of the key points that I think come up in it. And one of the things that's really important, at least in her research. Now, I don't know that this, again, 20 years, it usually takes almost a generation for something to really take a hold or to change. Okay, a generation, for those of you who don't know, is 25 years. So we're coming up on this book being a generation in the making. Okay. In her work here, one of the things that's important to remember, and one of the reasons I think it's important to talk about advertising, is we are all, whether male, female, transgender, does not matter. We are all subject to advertising. I mean, and we are just beaten with it. Okay. I think I remember reading somewhere, I don't think it was in this, but I think I remember reading somewhere something like per week, we're as Americans, we're subject to something like 2,000 advertisements or something like that. I mean, that's a lot. And a lot of us also know that we can see we're subject to so much advertising. There are a lot of commercials that I see probably multiple times in like a sitting, like while I'm watching TV. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but let's say I'm watching a movie on on cable. I'm sorry, I need to clean my glasses. Let's say I'm watching a movie on cable, and it has regular standard commercial breaks. I know that there are times where I probably see the same commercial in a 2-hour time frame probably half a dozen times. And there are times where as good as my memory is, I don't remember once I'm done viewing. I might remember the ad. I would say 3/4 of the time, I don't remember what it was for. Okay. That my point is that's, I've kind of trained myself to sort of selectively ignore or selectively pay attention to advertisements. Like a lot of times I just don't, I see them and I hear them, but it's almost like they're not there. It's sort of the same principle as like when I'm writing, a lot of times I put music on in the background, but it's just noise. Like while I'm working, I don't really hear it. It's just noise. It's something there to make me feel a little more sane than just sitting in the quiet. Okay. So where I'm going with this is one of the things Romaine says is that in her research, 75% of consumers are women. Okay. So what that means is that when a company hires a marketing firm, which is what they do, they hire a marketing firm to create an advertisement. Okay. If that company knows that 75% of the consumer body is women, then naturally what they're going to do is they're going to do their research on women, what women like, what women want, and craft an ad accordingly. Okay. That's sort of where Romaine's assertion is. Okay. And that's why she's saying that what's crazy about so many advertisements is that knowing this, the ads still oftentimes are crafted in a way that make women look sort of subservient, dumb. I would even go so far as to say, almost sort of like, I don't know how many of you all have ever seen Gordon Ramsay. The chef on TV, like Hell's Kitchen, and he had another show, but I can't remember what it was called now. But Master Chef, and the thing about Gordon Ramsay is he had this phrase he would use called "busy idiot." And basically what a busy idiot is it doesn't necessarily mean you're stupid. What it means is that you work, but you don't work in a very smart way. Like you're almost like you're working harder instead of working smarter. And it's amazing how many commercials we can see on TV today that are an example of these ideas. For example, the very first one that pops into my head, and it's not in here. Again, I'm kind of trying to build off of what's in here because this is a little bit dated. The Pine Sol ads. You have a stereotypical African American, what would be called today a mammy figure. She's larger. She's not dolled up, and essentially what she's made to look like is a domestic servant. She's never not doing anything she's never doing anything that doesn't involve some sort of domestic servitude. Mopping a floor, wiping a counter, washing a dish. What I'm getting at is, in a sense, these ads they're just perpetuating the same stereotype that has been around for, 150 years, which is that, again, like the jolly African-American woman who works in the house, while at least historically, like in your textbook would talk about probably, while the less refined slaves would have been working outside. So essentially, this woman is fulfilling a stereotypical role. One of my students has done a lot of her, or former students, has done a lot of her research on the Mammy character and the way that it's still being portrayed now. And the Pine Sol lady is a perfect example of just them taking that stereotype and running with it. And I think what Romaine is also saying to consumers is, here's the whole thing. If you see an ad and an ad offends you, or you find an ad questionable, don't go buy the product. That's one of the things I think Romaine is hinting at too. It's that if you take umbrage with the way a product is marketed, don't give it patronage. Don't buy it. Because if you do, what you're doing is you're tacitly telling that company that the ads are working. And if the ads are working, they're never going to change them. Okay, here's a great example, though you don't see many commercials for it. Another one is like Aunt Jemima syrup. Aunt Jemima is another example of like the Mammy. Look at the front of the syrup bottle. It's an African-American woman with a bandana, tied in the front, and it's basically indicating that, again, this is an African-American woman who created some syrup recipe or made some syrup. I think I actually remember reading that she was a character in a play or something, and that's where that came from. Okay, so again, that just goes to prove, like, these are perpetuating stereotypes that this in this case, the Mammy figure, the Black woman, belongs in the home doing domestic labor. That's where she belongs. You could kind of take it a step further today too, though she's not domesticated. Well, I guess maybe in a way you could make the argument that she is the woman on the Popeyes commercial. I mean, that is just a stereotype that blows my mind that those commercials even continue to be made. And I think anybody who's had me as a teacher before knows I'm not some like, delicate, hypersensitive person. Like, the world is a cruel place. We all know that. But where I'm going with it is that, those ads are so blatantly, to me, I mean, they're just, if they're not quote unquote out and out racist, they're at the very least, they're just highly questionable as to why this African-American woman has to get on here and use this clearly, like, what's the word I would use? Affected voice. Ooh, honey child, these new Popeyes chicken tenders. I mean, what I'm getting at is, like, why can't she speak like a normal person? Why can't she just say, hey, these chicken tenders are new at Popeyes. They're $3.99 with a side of fries. Again, they're racializing things. Okay. And again, the other one is they're genderizing things, because a lot of these ads, what I'm getting at is they would never feature a male. And if they do feature a male, like, for example, a Pine Sol commercial. Okay. The way it would probably feature a male would be if it showed like a clip of a family coming into a home or something after the home was cleaned, and the father is clearly like the symbol of opulence in the home. He would be coming in wearing like a suit. And the wife would be, either setting the table or doing something domestic. So again, like what Romaine is saying is that a lot of times too, messages they're coded into commercials. And before I actually go and dig a little bit more through the article specifically, one of the other things Romaine argues that I agree with And I think that advertising has probably always tried to do this. She makes the argument that what happens with advertising is it creates an alternate reality. Advertising is not reflective of the way things actually are. It creates an Okay, my internet, it said my internet connection went out there, so that's why I stopped. Again, my wife is working from home today, and so she's got a lot of the bandwidth going on over there. The reason why advertisers want to create an alternate reality for people is because they want to make you think you can't live your life without their product. That's the alternate reality. Okay. Clorox, these are things I think of, like Clorox, Band-Aid, Kleenex. Those are three, you realize those are three, oh, and another one, Coca-Cola. Those are 4 brand name products. But a lot of people use those words interchangeably to cover anything that is a similar product. Clorox is bleach. Okay. So what I'm getting at is, like, just because I go to the store, if I buy a bottle of bleach, doesn't mean I necessarily bought Clorox. Clorox is not the only bleach. Okay. If I go to the store and I buy adhesive for cuts, okay, that's not a Band-Aid. Band-Aid is a brand name. Okay. If I go buy tissues and I call them Kleenex, and they're Bilo brand tissues, they're not Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand name. Okay. And then finally, the reason I use Coca-Cola as an example is when I first met my wife, I remember this happening. My wife came over to my apartment at the time, and I used to drink a lot of soda, and I was drinking a Mountain Dew Code Red. Code Red was my favorite soda. Probably still would be if I was drinking soda. And I asked her if she wanted something to drink, and she said, I'll have a Coke. And I don't like cola. So I went, well, I don't have any Coke. And she said, yeah, you do. You were just drinking one. And I was like, no, that's a Mountain Dew. And she was like, yeah. Well, what I'm getting at is, again, we talk about how people in different places call people different things. She lived in Georgia most of her life, where they call soda Coke. Well, I'm from Virginia. We call it soda there. When I lived in Cincinnati, they called it pop. Okay. So my point is, like, these advertisers want to create an alternate world for you where their product is the one that you ascribe as being the product. If you don't have Clorox, you don't have bleach. If you don't have Coke, you don't have soda. If you don't have Kleenex, you don't have tissues. And if you don't have Band-Aids, you don't have adhesive wraps. Okay, that's where I'm going with this. It's that alternative reality where they make you feel like you have to have that product. Well, let's be honest, like, especially you guys, you college kids. I was a college kid for 12 years. I was a broke ass. Okay, and I see my internet's not working good again. So, okay, my internet was not working again there. Let's say Band-Aids come in like a box of 30, which I believe they do. Last time I bought them. If Band-Aid brand costs $2.59 and Bilo brand costs 99 cents, as a college kid, if you need Band-Aids, which one do you think you're going to buy? You're probably going to buy the Bilo brand, because is it really worth $1.60 more to get the brand name? Probably not. Clorox is the same way. Clorox costs twice what Bilo bleach does. Okay. The point I'm making is they make you think you need that product. That's the one you have to have. That's that alternate reality. Okay. We see it all the time. And it's not just in those kind of ads. That's just the kind I've chosen to use as an example. So I want to see here. And of course, one of the things I already mentioned, companies pay millions sometimes maybe even billions, depending on the company, to market their products. And one of the first things, like when I teach English to people, and I know you guys aren't taking this as really in English class, but one of the things I always make my students try to understand in like freshman comp is, if you're going to be writing anything, if you're going to be speaking something, really the first thing you need to know is your audience. And those companies pay millions or billions of dollars for people to craft a message that hits their audience. So one of the things Romaine uses as an example here is like Sports Illustrated, okay, is probably most commonly read by men. Now, that's not to say women don't read it, but they have to go with what the percentages would say, which means you're going to find more ads in there that probably are geared toward men than you would if you were reading like Good Housekeeping, which is an magazine that's geared toward women. And there are always going to be quote unquote male products out there, things that are considered male, like tobacco products, which that may be one of the dated things about Romaine's article. I'm not sure if they're still actually allowed to advertise tobacco in magazines. I don't want to say they're not, because I don't want to misinform you, but I do know that they've tightened up a lot on sort of the mediums that they're allowed to use. The thing that stood out to me the most was like, even though I don't really watch it, like NASCAR used to be an industry that the sponsors were fueled by tobacco and alcohol. And then suddenly they told them like, and so like a lot of their sponsors just went out the window. And I know on TV, they used to be able to advertise cigarettes and stuff, and they can't anymore. You do see liquor and beer still advertised on TV. But where I'm going with this is, again, like advertisements, it's not just what's in the ad, it's where the ad's placed. So again, like for example, I would say if you're watching sports on TV, you're more likely to see those male products than you would be to see female products. I'm not saying you wouldn't see any female, quote unquote. And again, these are all loose, because it's not to say that there aren't, like, I probably do at least half the cleaning in my house, probably more. So what I mean is, like, for me to see an ad for Clorox or for dishwashing soap or for detergent, like, I'm probably going to look at that as much as I look at most any other ad, because I do those things. I do use those products, but a lot of men don't. And conversely, there are male products like shave. Women obviously use shaving cream, but usually the commercials for it are men, shaving their faces. Well, women historically, don't do a whole lot of time shaving their face. Even though razors are like a unisex product, I would argue that most of the time that you see them advertised, it's a man shaving most of the time. Again, none of this is hard and fast, guys. I want to make sure you understand that none of this stuff is like, this isn't like a hard science. Okay, this isn't like Einstein's theory of relativity. Okay, a lot of it's theory. A lot of it is it's based on sort of what we would call empirical research. What that means is, it's based on people sitting and watching TV for 8 hours and taking notes on it. Okay, it's very empirically done, and a lot of people would say it's not necessarily scientific. Okay, well, if you want to think of it as being like a soft science, that's probably a better way to think of like something like linguistics. It's a softer, at least this is called sociolinguistics. It's a softer science. Okay. But that doesn't mean there's no science involved. And it doesn't mean there's no data involved. It just means, a lot of this stuff is not necessarily like tried and true and proven. Like I said earlier, it's not gospel. Okay. Again, you have to excuse me for looking at this. I'm just trying to look through and find the most important things that I can find. Okay. And another one I think that's also important um, is Romaine's idea that, in a lot of advertisements, women are actually objectified as being sort of like almost like they are the product. Okay. Like what that means, her example was, and again, you got to remember some of these are very dated. I don't even know that this company is still in business, but she said, I don't even know the Continental Airlines is still in business. To be honest with you, they may have been one of those airlines that merged over with another one. But like when the airline industry really hit a like a lull, September 11th, I think. And again, I know most of you guys were little tykes, little guys, if you were around. Most of you probably were around. You were just too young to remember it. I think that's when the airline industry, really hit a wall, and a lot of airlines end up merging in an attempt to save what business they had. And I want to say Continental may be one of those because I don't fly that often, but I got to tell you, I don't think I've seen Continental um, offering flights or Continental ads in quite a while. So I don't even know if they're still around. But my point is um, one of the things that it says Continental Airlines promoted its services with the spare part slogan, "We really move our tail for you." And what she was saying was like it was kind of keying in on the female flight attendants. If you remember, one of the first exercises I had you do in class was gendering occupations, and one of the ones I asked you was flight attendants. Well, that one would have adhered to the stereotype that women are um, women are by and large the comprise the flight attendant business, and we really move our tail for you would indicate that their rear end, so they're being objectified, sexualized. Okay. And again, like what I think she's also saying again is to go back to that main theme of the last chapter of Romaine that you read, which was chapter 6, is that because that's men's language renders women in a position of being subordinate, because not very many women are going to go around probably referring to their rear end as their tail. Well, I'll move my tail for you. Or a slang term, I'm a piece of tail. Okay. Like those are things you hear men say. So the point I'm getting at is like clearly that ad almost, I mean, beyond probably any doubt, was created by a group of men or a man. And they don't think about how calling a woman a piece of tail or saying she'll really move her tail is I mean, it's not the kind of, it's not, let me put it this way. The two phrases that I like to use, it doesn't age well and it's not a good look. Those are two phrases you'll hear me say. It doesn't age well and it's not a good look. It's not a good look to be referring to women by their posteriors. It's just think about this. This is what I would tell my students. Think about if you were in a professional setting, which these people are who are making these ads. This is a very professional. I mean, they're in an office making these. They're not hanging out, at the pool, probably doing this. Do you think that would be sexually like appropriate language to use, or do you think that would be almost like harassment? Because when I think about that, like I would that euphemism would never even cross my mind as being appropriate to use toward a female. It wouldn't even cross my mind. Now, like if somebody told me to move my tail, I would, I tend to think less offensively about it because I don't think they would mean it in a sexual way. I think they'd be saying like, well, you need to get busy then. I think my dad even used to tell me that, well, you better move your tail. Again, it's not the same thing. So that's another thing Romaine's talking about too in advertising is there's always going to be that double standard there where like if men are objectified in a way, it's almost like a parody. When women are objectified, it's just the way it is. Like For example, you're not going to see too many commercials for a man cleaning a home where a man is wearing like an apron, okay, and he's muscular, handsome, wearing an apron that's just cut down to where his thighs would be, walking around cleaning, so that women watching the commercial will ogle the fact that there's this very muscular, good-looking man who's mopping the floor, and we can see basically every inch of his body. You aren't going to see ads like that unless they're meant to be like a parody of something. You understand what I mean? Like it would be making a joke out of it. Whereas a lot of times when you see commercials that maybe aren't like the Pine Sol ones, but like ones that may feature, whether they're African American, Caucasian, doesn't really matter what ethnicity, where a lot of times you see women cleaning a house and they're wearing like, you know, again, I'm not a fashionista, so I don't know the proper term for it, but like they're wearing like a frilly dress and high heels while they're mopping a floor. Who does that? Again, that's that alternate reality that advertisers are trying to create for you. It's that alternate reality of, you know, should my wife be wearing high heels and a little short dress when I come home and see her cleaning? Is that how it should be? Because I don't think that's probably how it should be, and I don't think that's probably how it is for most people. I'm not saying, again, please understand me, I'm not saying that would never happen. What I'm saying is I highly doubt that's the norm. And I think that's what Romaine's trying to get at, is advertisements are supposed to do that to you. They're not supposed to be representing the norm to you. That's not what they're designed to do. They're designed to make things fantastical. If things were presented the way they were, you would just get bored with it. It's like movies. Movies are supposed to be an escape, right? They're not supposed to be like your everyday life. If they were, why would you go watch them? Okay. And like I said, I'm going to try to wrap up pretty quickly. Here's another one too. Okay. Like, just because you have a historically masculine product doesn't mean that it can't be made into something that's more feminine. Example, she uses it, and I will give a side example. Virginia Slims, cigarettes. They're real long, they're real thin. I'm not going to say to you for what, if they still make them. Again, like I smoked when I was in high school trying to be cool. Like I don't smoke. Okay, guys, don't pick it up. Bad habit, nasty habit. I don't even know if they still make them. And I'm from Virginia. Okay, I don't even know if they still make Virginia Slims. The one thing I remember most about Virginia Slims is Outkast had a great line about them. We done come a long way like them slim ass cigarettes from Virginia. Okay, that's mostly what I remember about Virginia Slims. But the other thing I will use as an anecdote here. In an episode of The Simpsons, Homer thinks that his son Bart is gay. So he's trying to turn Bart into a man by having him, again, this would be a great episode to use. If I could find it online, I'll post it. I may be able to. There's an episode where Bart, again, he has started hanging out with a grown man who's homosexual. And so Homer fears, because Homer's a bigot on there basically, Homer fears that Bart's going to become gay. And so what he does is he says, he comes up with these male gender roles in his mind about how, what someone would do to be viewed as being manly. So Homer goes and he gets Bart a lawn chair and he puts it in like a median in the highway. And Bart is sitting looking at a sign, and the sign is for cigarettes, but it's for Slims. Okay, I don't remember. It's obviously a made-up brand because it's a cartoon. And Homer comes back like an hour later and he goes, okay, Bart. He was like, did you learn anything while you were out here? And Bart's like, yeah, I kind of want a cigarette. And his dad's like, all right, good. What's your brand? And Bart goes, anything slim. And Homer's like, ugh, because he realizes, you know, he wasn't thinking when he put him out there, if Bart was gonna smoke, he wanted to smoke a woman's cigarette. Okay, quote, woman's cigarette. And again, like, it's the same thing with liquor, beer. It's not to say that these products that women don't consume them. That's not again what Romaine is saying. What she's saying is historically, I would say particularly you see that with like beer ads. Beer ads have historically used women in scantily clad clothing, party atmosphere, and that's not to say that you don't see commercials every now and again for beer that you can tell are more geared toward women, but on the whole, it's still considered a man's product, so it's going to be geared toward men. Again, she's talking about magazine advertisements and the words they use. Again, a lot of her being a linguist, a lot of what she talks about is related to the way our language is genderized. And she's saying, like, for example, some of the words used in like a cologne ad were like primitive, raw, words that make a man just seem beastly, right? Oh, I'm a beast. And, I would also go so far as to say, again, just because you have a philosophy behind your sell doesn't always mean it's going to work either. Because, like, frankly, I don't want women thinking I'm primitive. I mean, I really don't. I would rather have a woman thinking I'm intelligent and or sophisticated. Not saying I am those things, but I would rather have them think that about me than think I'm some sort of like I said, some sort of relic to the caveman. I don't want to be viewed that way. I don't go up and grab a female and go, Jane, you mine, like Tarzan would. I mean, that's not my style. Some guys, maybe it is, and maybe that's cool for them. But what I'm saying is that's a product that I would never use based on that ad. That's me. Again, that's also part of this class too, guys. You have to figure out what works for you. Not just fall victim to what an ad brainwashes you into thinking. I mean, I hate to tell anybody out there this, but just because you watch a commercial where someone is throwing a party and at that party they're serving Budweiser, and the party is filled with 100 people, all of whom are great looking, doesn't mean that if you go buy a keg of Budweiser and throw a party, 100 good looking people are going to show up at your house. I'm sorry to rain on your parade if you think that. Especially if you're under 21 and you can't wait, you're like, yeah, it's going to happen. Probably not. Again, alternate reality. Same thing about like cologne. Sure, there are going to be times where you wear cologne and someone tells you smell nice. And perfume too. That's going to happen. But again, just because you're wearing a cologne doesn't mean that a bunch of women are going to come up and throw themselves on you. It's probably not going to happen. But that's the alternate reality that the advertiser creates for you, where they make you think that without that product, you won't have that. So if you're using Old Spice cologne and you're not using Polo, well, you're not going to get the women you'd get if you had Polo. Okay? Who knows? What I'm saying is, I think that's highly specious. That's just me. But they want you to buy their product. So that's what they're doing. What I'm telling you is, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. So you have to have an idea in mind of exactly how far you're willing to go to test the waters with this. I mean, are you going to go, as a college kid especially, are you going to go spend $70 on a bottle of Polo cologne just because you see an ad with a good-looking woman in it who's draped all over a guy? I mean, I hope you wouldn't do that. Because one, I think it shows you're not thinking. And two, I think it shows you're not responsible with your money, if that's what you're going to do. And let me try to wrap up because I've got my appointment here. I think the only other one she was making a point about, and again, I've got to wrap up quickly, was the milk ads. The milk ads were very much unisex ads. Okay, what that means, unisex, is that those ads were made to cater to both males and females. And typically, I think the reason for the milk ads actually were geared toward parents buying milk for their kids. I think actually that's what those ads were designed to do. So they used athletes. And I think one of the things that she was showing an example of on here was like Cal Ripken was well known for being a very durable guy. He played like 3,100 straight games. Okay. For those of you that don't follow sports, it's never going to happen again. And I'm pointing over here because I'm looking at the picture. In his picture, he's in his uniform holding a bat. And then next to him is, I can't see who it is. But at any rate, I would guess maybe she's like an Olympian, like a swimmer, and they put her in like her swimsuit. So much less of her is covered that, again, she's being objectified. It's not the milk. When you look at that ad, you're not looking at the milk and you're not looking at the milk mustache. You're looking at her body. And what Romaine would argue is that is a strategic feature of the ad. They're going to make a male viewer key in on the woman's body. That's what we want to see. We want to see that woman's body. And so that's what we'll show. Whereas with the male, we'll cover him up. We don't need to see his body. So it's that double standard. Again, I'm not saying that's your reality. What I'm saying is that's the reality of the way that Romaine is depicting the advertising world. Certain things are expected of ads that feature women. Certain things are expected of ads that feature men. So on that note, again, double standards, what Romaine would say is probably they're not fair, but they are what they are. It's your choice, though, about whether or not you live by them. You don't make the double standards. None of us do. They already exist, whether arbitrary or not. But you're the one who makes the choice about whether or not you adhere to them. Okay? That's where I'm going to end. I've got my meeting. I hope you got something out of this. I tried to summarize that as much as I could in 45 minutes. I hope it helps you. And on that note, again, keep on top of things like that cultural artifact assignment, because a lot of you didn't do it. And if you don't do it, it's really going to hurt your grade. All right. So be sure you do what I've sent out in emails to you. All right. On that note, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. See ya.